What is up, guys? We're back with more picks and predictions. This weekend, we got UFC Vegas 107 after a 1 week break from fights. As usual, I'm not going to yap. Let's jump right into the picks and predictions for every single matchup on this fight card. To kick off the card, we got Rayanne dos Santos versus Ardelean, and this is a fight that, you don't want any part of your bankroll touching this fight. I wouldn't realistically bet a single cent on this matchup. Super low level women's MMA. We got Rayanne dos Santos on a 2-fight skid, losing to Puja Tomar by split decision. Then prior to that, Toledo Alencar. The Alencar one, not as bad, but the Puja Tomar one, it's a pretty bad loss. Then we have Ardelean, who lost to Melissa Martinez, and then prior to that, lost to Shauna Bannon. So these fighters are, losing to low-level women's MMA fighters, which means they themselves are even lower-level women's MMA fighters. And, take that as you will, but the Rayanne dos Santos, she's a little bit of a favorite here. I think she's going to have to be the pick. She's going to be the cleaner fighter, and Ardelean, well, her style is kind of, tricky when it comes to fights like this. She's just going to pressure forward and just win it off straight work and grit. And you kind of don't want to go up against that, especially at this type of level where Rayanne dos Santos, while she will have the skills to beat Ardelean, she might just get out-pressured by her. So I'm going to go with Rayanne dos Santos. She's a better fighter here. I think she should be able to piece up Ardelean, but we'll see what happens. Ideally, this probably just comes down to a close decision anyways. I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next up, we got Andreas Gustafsson versus Trevin Giles, and I'm going to go with Gustafsson to win this one. I watched his Contender Series performance. I even had a little bit of a bet on Gustafsson in his Contender Series fight, and he definitely delivered. His performance was really good. He pushed his opponent up against the fence the entire time, and I remember Dana White even said, hey, you're on Contender Series, and that's what you're going to do. But then, he started landing nasty elbows up against the fence, nasty knees to the body that ended up dropping his opponent and finishing him. Trevin Giles, on the other hand, Giles, more athletic. He's going to be, a bit more fluid, a bit quicker. He definitely has a really good jab. But, Gustafsson's one of those fighters that, will weaponize cardio. He'll just walk forward, press you up against the cage, make you hold his weight up against the cage, and just, tire you out. I think that's one good thing about Gustafsson here. On top of that, he can definitely eat a punch too. I think he's going to eat a jab, maybe 2 jabs to get in on Trevin Giles. Once he gets a hold of him, just kind of pressing him up, racking up control time, and he does do damage up against the fence too, not just holding his opponent. So like we saw in his Contender Series fight, he will throw some nasty knees, nasty elbows up against the fence that will do some real damage to Trevin Giles. And to be honest, I think that Gustafsson should be able to find a finish here on Trevin Giles, maybe a later one, not something super early, but just tiring him out, making him, hold his weight for a couple rounds, getting Trevin Giles super gassed, and then just landing something big to kind of just get him out of there. So I see Andreas Gustafsson getting the finish here. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next fight up, we got Jordan Leavitt versus Kurt Holobaugh. And I'm going to have to go with Jordan Leavitt to win this one. This one's a little bit of a tricky fight, though. Jordan Leavitt coming off a layoff that's over a year and 5 months long. And that was a loss to Chase Hooper in his last fight. Then Kurt Holobaugh making a quick turnaround, so being fairly active. Fought 2 months ago, lost to Alexander Hernandez. This is going to be a close fight, a really interesting one. I don't like the layoffs. Layoffs have not been performing well recently, so that's something to keep note of. Most fighters coming off, over a year and a half layoff have performed pretty bad as of late. In this one, though, Jordan Leavitt, I do want to lean him a little bit. Kurt Holobaugh is a fighter that, normally people like at plus money. He's gritty. He's durable. He'll come forward. He's okay everywhere, so he's not going to get exposed at any part of his game. But one thing we've seen from Kurt Holobaugh is he's a little bit comfortable on bottom position, will lose some control time there, and, tend to lose a bit of rounds there. And some of the fight IQ is not the best with Kurt Holobaugh because, he kind of accepts bottom position a little bit. Jordan Leavitt, on the other hand, super unorthodox, a bit of a specialist on the ground. And on the feet, he doesn't have too much to offer, but he does throw some wild strikes out there that, can throw off the rhythm of someone like Kurt Holobaugh. In general, though, Holobaugh should be the better striker, and Leavitt should be the slightly better grappler. But I just think that Leavitt will have less lapses in fight IQ, and Kurt Holobaugh might just find a way to kind of lose the fight based off some crazy scramble where he ends up on bottom. He goes submission over position, and Leavitt is smart enough to get out of the submission, and the next thing you know, Leavitt's on top and racks up a bit of control time, and that kind of gives Leavitt the round. So I like the fight IQ side for Leavitt. I think that in the scrambles, he'll go position over submission, and Kurt Holobaugh is someone that will do the exact opposite. So that's why I'm going to lean Leavitt. I don't like the layoff, though. Like I said, layoffs have been performing pretty poorly recently. Let's move on to the next matchup. Up next, we got Allan Nascimento versus Jafel Filho. I'm going to have to go with Jafel Filho, the underdog in this matchup. I think that it's a pretty well-versed matchup. Both these guys are pretty evenly matched. I would say Allan Nascimento is a slightly better striker, but Jafel Filho does have more aggression. And while, either of these guys could potentially find a finish in this fight, and that would probably come by submission, I think that Jafel Filho is a bit more aggressive, has a little bit more of the finishing upside, and he's the underdog here, so I'm going to have to lean his side slightly because of the odds, but, just because I think this should be almost pick 'em, and you see Jafel Filho sitting at maybe like plus 140 right now, so I think that there's some value on his side, so I'm going to lean towards him. I think that, both these guys are probably going to put up some really cool scrambles, and I just think that Filho is just going to get slightly better of Nascimento in those scrambles and, just do a little bit more work, especially if he ends up on top position against Allan Nascimento. So that's why I'm going to lean Jafel Filho. I think it's going to be a super close fight. Excited to see how it plays out. Let's move on to the next matchup. Up in the next matchup, we got Reese versus Dusko Todorovic, and Reese currently sitting at minus 250. I'm going to pick him to win this fight, but I think that's a little bit steep, especially with the potential ways this fight could play out. Both of these guys have, shot chins. It's super vulnerable. Both these guys could get knocked out at any point in time. I do see this fight ending in the first round. And also, both these guys carry the power to knock somebody out whenever they want. So it's a pretty bad combination. This fight could literally end at any point in time. If Todorovic lands big, Reese could be done. If Reese lands big, Todorovic could be done. And I think that Reese is the slightly better striker, so I'm going to lean his way to kind of land that big shot first. Just, more likelihood of landing that big shot first. So I'm going to pick him. I think Todorovic also, if he could potentially start wrestling and stuff, could make this fight weird. But I'm going to go with Reese. I think he has the tools to get it done, but Todorovic does propose a decent amount of danger, and with someone like Reese's chin, that could happen at any time. So I'm going to lean Reese. I think the price tag is a little bit hefty. Let's see how it goes, though. The line is tightening. We'll keep an eye on it. Let's move on to the next matchup. In the next matchup, we got Ketlen Vieira versus Macy Chiasson, and I'm going to go lean Macy Chiasson here. This is basically a pick and fight. Line's been flipping all over the place, and I think it makes sense. This should be basically a pick and fight. Ketlen Vieira, she's going to have that loss to Kayla Harrison where, she made Kayla Harrison look a lot less hyped than Kayla Harrison normally looked prior to that. But at the same time, Ketlen Vieira didn't really do that much in that fight either. And then we have Macy Chiasson coming off that win to Mayra Bueno Silva where she got that doctor stoppage in the second round after a nasty elbow she landed on Bueno Silva. I'm going to go with, Macy Chiasson. I think that Ketlen Vieira, her path to victory here is really through a bunch of the wrestling and the takedowns. I think that on the feet, Macy Chiasson, she has that reach advantage. She uses it well too, and she doesn't just kind of walk backwards, try to maintain range, because that also probably wouldn't work against the Ketlen Vieira. She definitely comes forward, throws some real fire towards her opponent, and Vieira can be hit. Vieira does not have the best movement, the best striking defense. She definitely can be hit. So, see Macy Chiasson moving forward here as the bigger fighter, just like potentially beating up on Ketlen Vieira. Where this fight could get close is if, Ketlen Vieira really wants to go all-out wrestling, which she can. She potentially does have the tools to do that against the Macy Chiasson. Really just slow the pace of the fight down and just control it as much as possible. In that scenario, though, I got to lean towards damage for my pick. I think that at the end of the day, Macy Chiasson's more dangerous. She can do a bunch of damage, and while she does have some holes in her grappling defense, in her takedown defense, it's not so terrible where I kind of just have to go towards the wrestling side. And Ketlen Vieira's grappling is not also so dominant that I kind of have to pick it. So Vieira, decent wrestler. Chiasson has okay takedown defense. In that scenario, I got to lean towards the damage, and that's on the Macy Chiasson side. Let's move on to the next matchup. All right, up next, we got Dustin Jacoby versus Bruno Lopes, and I'm going to go with Dustin Jacoby to beat Bruno Lopes. I think that, Jacoby, definitely the cleaner striker here, the better movement. Former Glory kickboxing fighter, really good kickboxer, and probably still holds a speed advantage too, even though he is 37, and Bruno Lopes is coming in at 32. Bruno Lopes is kind of big, looks a little bit like a heavyweight, and, he won his last fight, his UFC debut against Magomed Gattiasulov, where he kind of just like Martin Budai maxed in that matchup, just pushing Gattiasulov up against the fence multiple times throughout the round, racking up control time, just like chain wrestling. Got Gattiasulov down a couple times. Didn't do too much with the takedowns, but did get them at some point. Dustin Jacoby, man, he's pretty well versed, has a good resume. Bruno Lopes doesn't seem like he has a ton of talent, and the way he won that Gattiasulov fight was, very gritty, just very, like I said, Martin Budai-esque. And there's like the Marab way to do it, which looks like kind of unstoppable and dominant, and then there's a Martin Budai way to do it, which just looks like, bro, you're just fat and you're leaning up against me. I'm just getting tired. So Bruno Lopes did that to Gattiasulov. He has some, good power in his hands too. He does pack a punch, and he can eat a shot as well, Bruno Lopes. But Dustin Jacoby, I think, realistically should be able to kind of move, piece up Bruno Lopes in this fight. Dustin Jacoby bringing power to the table himself. And, Dustin Jacoby, been around the block, losses to, like, Khalil Roundtree, Asmat Mirzakhanov. Alonzo Menafield is probably the lowest, like, skill-ish fighter that he's lost to. And then Dominic Reyes after that. Dominic Reyes on the crazy resurgence. We told you that he was going to beat Nikita Krylov. But, yeah, I don't know, man. I think that Dustin Jacoby should have it on Bruno Lopes here. If Lopes just goes all-out wrestling, all-out Martin Buday again, that's probably his path to victory. That's going to be a hard one to pull off on Dustin Jacoby, but, it is possible. I don't love this spot because Dustin Jacoby is 37. He is in, like, a weird spot in his career where, he knows he's probably never going to contend for a title. So it's going to be interesting how motivated he is to kind of go out there and continue, while someone like Bruno Lopes, 14-1, has looked pretty decent in his career outside of one loss to Brenson Ribeiro in the Dana White Contender Series. So different spots of the career make this fight interesting, but Dustin Jacoby should be the better fighter. I'm going to lean him. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next fight up, we got Ramiz Brahimaj versus Billy Ray Goff, and I'm going to go with Billy Goff to win this matchup. I think that, Ramiz throughout his career has been a little bit of a submission or bust type of fighter. He has, 11 pro wins, and 10 of them have come by submission. His last fight against Mickey Gall was his one win that was not a submission. It was a knockout win to Mickey Gall. Let's be real, Mickey Gall has been done for a while. He was never really good. Billy Goff, on the other hand, Billy Goff is tough. He's durable. He'll come forward, and he'll definitely make the fight a dogfight. And I just don't think someone like Ramiz Brahimaj is really ready for that. Ramiz also is not like a crazy wrestler. He fought Themba Gorimbo, and Gorimbo just absolutely dominated him. So Ramiz Brahimaj, like I said, he has one path to victory against Billy Ray Goff, and that's to, like, hold him down and control him. But no one really has done that to Billy Ray Goff so far, and it's not like Ramiz Brahimaj is like this crazy wrestling prospect. He's really good with the submissions, but to submit someone, you kind of got to get them down first for the most part, and I think that's going to be hard in the first place. He may get a takedown or two, but, Billy Ray Goff will stand up, and once this fight's on the feet, Billy Goff is just walking Ramiz to the fence, throwing an insane amount of volume and just lighting him up. So I like Billy Goff to win this one. Billy Goff, not like crazy talented, but he's gritty, and he will fight for your money. So I do like Billy Goff here. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next up, we got Mateusz Gamrot versus Ludovic Klein, and this is probably the best fight on the card in general. Mateusz Gamrot, obviously at one point, was in title contention in the lightweight division. When we had Oliveira versus Makhachev 2, Gamrot was the backup fighter. At the time, I believe he was coming off his win to Arman Sarukian. And then after that, he has a loss to Beneil Dariush, which hasn't aged too well. Then he goes on a 3-fight win streak to Jalen Turner, Rafael Fiziev, Rafael Dos Anjos. And then he fights Dan Hooker, loses a close split decision. Arguable who won that fight. But, interesting part in Gamrot's career too, where he's kind of been close to the top, lost a couple fights to people that, maybe if he fought them again, he could get the win. I mean, he has wins over someone like Arman Sarukian, who in the division I think has only lost to him and Islam Makhachev. So that's obviously a crazy win to have on his resume. And then Ludovic Klein, man, he's gaining momentum just outside the rankings. This fight to kind of break into the rankings. Coming off a performance against Roosevelt Roberts where, he did win. He took it all 3 rounds to decision. He was minus 1,000. But Roosevelt Roberts also just super tall, super lanky, offered a pretty interesting challenge for Ludovic Klein. Prior to that, beats Thiago Moises, AJ Cunningham, Ignacio Bahamondes. The Bahamondes win, aging really well for Ludovic Klein. So Ludovic Klein, he is tough. He does have, good work on the feet. Mateusz Gamrot, on the other hand, generally a pretty one-dimensional game plan coming from his side. He's going to chain wrestle. He's going to do it a lot. He's going to want to get you to the ground. And he's not super dangerous when he does get the fight to the ground. He kind of just, does hold on for the most part. And you can get back up to his top pressure is also not the best. But he does have good cardio, and he does chain wrestle like a motherfucker for sure. So Mateusz Gamrot, that's one thing to watch out for. And against Ludovic Klein, I just think that Klein has good enough takedown defense to kind of do what a Dan Hooker did to Mateusz Gamrot. Now, does that mean that, you could go watch that Dan Hooker fight, place your bet at even money at the exact end, and potentially pick Mateusz Gamrot and still lose that bet because that fight was just super close? And if the Ludovic Klein one looks like that, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't really see a world where Ludovic Klein comes out here and just dominates Mateusz Gamrot, that's for sure. But he is an underdog, and I think that the finishing upside is on his side. The damage is kind of on his side. Gamrot's going to try to get him down. He's going to have to stop enough takedowns and do enough work to kind of, just piece up Gamrot as much as he can to win some rounds on the scorecards. Gamrot, on the other hand, you can also get up on Gamrot too. So I think the over here should be pretty clean. I think this fight goes the distance. Gamrot's going to slow the pace down with the wrestling. Ludovic Klein, he's going to try to get up, do a bunch of stuff. Maybe, Gamrot does get finished, but Gamrot gets chin and then he just gets back up. So Gamrot does have that type of chin where he gets dropped and the fight just keeps going. But that's also bad when it comes to scoring rounds because a close round can be swung if Gamrot just, gets dropped a little bit. So I'm going to lean Ludovic Klein. I'm going to stop the yapping here, going a little bit of circles, but I'm going to lean Ludovic Klein. I think that his takedown defense is going to be good enough, and Gamrot's just a little bit too one-dimensional and non-damage focused for me to pick him in this matchup. Let's move on to the next fight. And in the main event, we got Erin Blanchfield versus Maycee Barber in a 5-round fight. I'm not going to lie, this is a very, very weak fight card in my opinion. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I think Erin Blanchfield beats Maycee Barber, and I think it just comes down to one thing, realistically. Can Erin Blanchfield get a couple takedowns? If she gets some takedowns, her top pressure is great, her control is great. Maycee Barber might not get up for the rest of the round, and she's got 5 rounds here. She probably doesn't finish Maycee Barber, but she's got 5 rounds. Can she get 3 takedowns? I think she can. I think that Maycee Barber can be taken down. Erin Blanchfield does have the takedown game to kind of get her there. And, on the feet, I think that Maycee Barber is going to obviously have the advantage standing up, but Erin Blanchfield, decent enough striking and throws a decent enough volume to kind of just keep the fight going. I don't see Maycee Barber bringing like a Manon Fiorot type of threat to Erin Blanchfield where she just gets absolutely pieced up. We also saw Manon Fiorot mix in so much wrestling against Valentina Shevchenko in that title fight she just lost. So Manon Fiorot, while she did lose for the title, she is a very, very high-level fighter. Potentially a couple different decisions from being the champion right now. I thought she was going to be Shevchenko, and maybe in a rematch she probably could. But Erin Blanchfield then goes out there, beats Rose Namajunas with a bunch of takedowns and control time, and I think it's the same scenario here. I think she can get Maycee Barber down enough, and I think on the feet, Erin Blanchfield does throw a decent amount of volume. Her accuracy is not the best, but I think the volume is enough to kind of set up a good, well-rounded game plan against a Maycee Barber. So I'm going to go with Erin Blanchfield to get this one done. I think that, it's going to come down to the takedowns. Probably a pretty boring fight. Probably goes all the way, all 5 rounds. So maybe just a long 25-minute smoke break here. But yeah, I'm going to go with Erin Blanchfield. And that does it for the picks and predictions for UFC Vegas 107. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you did like what you heard, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and share the video with your friends. That really helps with the algorithm. We have, a couple third-party channels. If you guys do watch a ton of UFC predictions, we have third-party channels that track how well we're doing. UFC Predictions Tracker has us as the second best underdog predictor over the last 12 months. So, shout out to him for, keeping us accountable, tracking our progress, our success, and how we're doing. But yeah, man, we've been hitting at a very solid rate. If you do like what we're doing, if you want to support the channel, and if you want to access, some of our bets we have for every single fight card, check out betkopicks.com. You can sign up for our premium for $20 a month. And on that, you can see all our bets, all our unit sizing, where we're placing them, the odds we're catching our bets at as well. For $20 a month, super high value. We've been, profitable in the long run. We've been hitting underdogs at an insane rate as well. So check that out for sure. But in general, good luck to everyone this week. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys next week for Sean O'Malley versus Murad Valashvili 2.